Welcome to Second Love. I'm Gary Sturgis, grief specialist and the author of Surviving, Finding Your Way from Grief to Healing. Today I'm talking with a conversation with Julia. I recently wrote a blog on my Surviving Grief Facebook page about second love, falling in love again after losing a partner or spouse. This topic tends to be so difficult to talk about because not everyone is at the same place on their grief journey. Today, I'm talking to Julia, who not only found a second love, but also lost both. I thought Julia would be able to shed some light on the controversial topic of second love after loss. I actually met Julia over 8 years ago in my first grief support group after the loss of my own spouse. I remember her as being a beacon of hope at the time when I could never even imagine contemplating a second love. Welcome, Julia. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I'm going to be asking you some questions about your grief journey that I hope will help my viewers navigate this tangled topic.
Well, it's good to see you again, Gary. And I'm
happy you're here.
Perfectly fine with helping anybody I can.
Great. So, Julia, were you hesitant after the loss of your first husband to fall in love again? Did it feel like a betrayal?
After Lou, I'll address them by name. It makes me feel better. After Lou died, I was in a support group in Rockland, different from the one from when I met you, of course, 20 years later. And I was facilitating that group at the time. And Bob's wife, my second husband, Bob, his wife had passed away a year to the day after Lou died, which we always felt like was somehow meant to be, us meeting together. But he came into that support group as a guest of a friend of mine who was already in the group. And that's how I met him. I didn't know him before his wife died. I didn't know of him at all. And I wasn't really looking for love again. You know, I was still struggling with the loss of Lou. I was alone. My daughter was living in Japan at the time. And my son had just gotten married the month before Lou died. And he was the best man. Lou was the best man at my son's wedding. That's how close they were. So I was dealing with trying to soothe them for their circumstances and carry on myself as best I could. So anyway, I was in this support group and I was not looking for another love. So when Bob came in, he just came in. I mean, he was another member of the group. And at the time, the chairman or the leader of a group had assigned us randomly to whoever came in next. This was your person, and we would kind of call them once a day or, initiate conversations with them. So Bob was my assignment, sort of. So that's how I met him, but I certainly wasn't looking for anything. And of course, he was raw because it had just happened to him. And
so how long was it after your first husband died that you started the relationship with your second husband?
It's probably a year and a half. Lou died in July, and it wasn't until the following October, November. So it was a year and how many months that I met Bob. But I didn't start a relationship with him. I met him probably in September, and we didn't start going out to do anything together until December. So it was a year and a half.
Yeah. So how did you handle the fear of going through all the pain of loss again by opening your heart to another relationship? Because I know for a lot of people that even, especially if they're fresh in their loss of their spouse or their partner, it's scary to think about getting into another relationship, mostly because I think you feel like you don't want to go through that pain again if something should happen to them. So how did that feel for you? Like, did you think about that when you met your second husband?
I did, because when Bob asked me to go out to dinner with him, I said I didn't think I could do that. I says, I've got Lou to take care of in my head. And I don't know if I could leave him behind. I think was my exact words. I can't leave him behind and go off with somebody new. So
So
he said,
did,
don't leave him behind, he said. Take
yeah.
him with you and introduce me to him.
Oh,
I thought
that's,
that was the kindest thing that I had heard. You know, somebody was willing to meet him again and through my words, get to know him.
yeah.
That's basically what won me over with dating Bob.
So did you feel guilty when you started another relationship with someone else?
I did for a short while, but Bob was such a caring person that he kind of made all of that go away. I think it all depends on who you meet too.
So how long were you married to your first husband and how long were you married to your second husband?
The first husband, I was married 32 years, and Bob was just 20.
So what was that like for you having children? Like how did your second love affect them? Were they okay with you having someone
They
else?
really, yeah, they really loved Bob. They took to him right away. Although I can't imagine any two men being so different.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I always thought of Lou as my protector because I was 19 when I married him, and it was like he's taking care of me, and he did. He took care of me through the kids. We raised the children, and Bob was my comforter. You know, just two complete. I didn't feel like Bob was protecting me because it was a journey we took together. But for
Now,
Lou, it was
now,
different.
yeah, now did your second husband also have children?
He had three children, all married, off by themselves, you know, scattered all around the country, actually. And so he was living by himself in Belmont, which was quite a distance from Rockland. And I was living by myself down here in Rockland.
So how did you handle the burial of both of your husbands and how do you plan to put yourself to rest when the time comes?
Well, that was simple. At the very beginning, we brought this up and we talked about it. And we decided that maybe because it was so new for him, that he would go and he would be buried with his first wife, and I would be buried with my first husband. And that's the way it worked out. When Bob died, he was buried with her, with Shirley, and I have my double lot in Braintree where I will go. But if I could give you a side note on that, after Bob and I had started dating, I was going to Japan to meet my daughter. And we were really getting very, very close. So I says, well, and he had, forget, I think it was in April that we decided I was going to Japan. And he says, if I go to Japan with you, I says, I'd like to ask your daughter if I could marry you. So he did that. And when we got there, Bob went off for a nap, jet lag or whatever. And I was with my daughter alone for the first time. And she said to me, and just where are you going to be buried? So it was a question that was on her mind very much, that we had to talk about right away.
So
You
she
know,
wanted you to be with her dad.
she didn't express that, but she was happy with my answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. So was there anything, this question is probably my most important, and I think for my viewers as well. Was there anything different in your grieving process in regard to both your losses? In other words, was there anything different in the way you grieved your first love as opposed to the way you now grieve your second?
I was more receptive to accepting help from a support group with my second. It took me a while to get there for the first one. And I was very successful in compartmentizing Lou and Bob. They're nowhere alike. So, right at the beginning, there was no comparing the two. And I promised myself I would never compare the two because it just wasn't fair. But how I grieved them, it was so I felt like I was abandoned by Lou. It was so sudden. He just died, had a heart attack in the backyard and never woke up.
That was your first husband.
Yeah, yeah. So that was so sudden. And like I said, my son had just gotten married. My daughter was in Japan, and I was by myself. And had this house that I didn't know how to take care of, the outside of it. Had a brand new swimming pool that I didn't know how to take care of. And so I really felt abandoned by Lou. And it took me a while to get over that feeling of why did he do that to me? And with Bob, he was in the hospital. He had fallen and gotten a blood clot in his leg that they had to operate on, and he had a massive heart attack during the surgery. So it wasn't such a shock, And of course, he was older. He was 80 when he died. So it just wasn't the same.
Right. But I guess my question would be too, was the pain equal though? I mean, I imagine that it
Oh
was.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was hurt, that almost undescribable hurt that you feel that why,
Right.
why we had so much fun together. And with Bob, we loved to travel. We traveled all the time. And why?
Yeah. So do I dare ask, would you consider a third love if it presented itself?
Not at this point, Gary, because I was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and I have enough problems taking care of me than taking care of somebody else. If I don't feel like cooking and eating, I don't.
Yeah.
If I had a spouse, I'd have to do that stuff. So it's probably very selfish of me to think that way, but no, I don't think so.
So what advice would you give to someone who's grieving the loss of their spouse if they're contemplating a second love?
Oh, go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah, go for it. I remember having a conversation with a friend at work. I was working at the time, and I said that Bob had asked me to marry him, and I said yes. And she says, "Why? Why?" And I said, "Because he's such a great guy." And she says, "But," I said, "No buts." I says, "If I get 2 good years out of him," I says, "I'll be very, very happy." This was my answer to her. And I got 20 wonderful years, wonderful, wonderful years out of him.
Yeah. I think, what a lot of my viewers struggle with, I always tell people that I think two topics that are difficult to talk to any group of people as a speaker, myself that talks in front of people all the time, is religion and politics, because there's so much controversy between those and no one can ever agree on those. But I always say we should add to that grief as a topic that's pretty controversial and difficult to talk about. And I think one of the biggest topic is what we're talking about today, is the whole conversation of, second love and how difficult it is. And, I can post a blog. I recently posted a blog about second love, and I post them now and then. I get emails from people. I ask my followers, send me an email and let me know a topic you want to write about. And that topic comes up a lot. But it's interesting that when I do post that type of blog, there's so many viewers that will say like, "Oh, never, I could never even imagine that." And then there's a lot of viewers that find comfort in the fact that I'm telling them it's okay. And
Yeah.
so that's why I wanted to talk to you today, because I wanted to get a feeling from you. And not only did you have two loves, but you also lost them both too. So I know that's difficult, but I'm happy to hear you say that you don't regret that. You don't regret the second love, because I think it's so important for those people that are dead set against it. And I'm sure you agree with me when I say that one of the biggest things they say is, I think that people get it in their mind, we all do after we lose a partner or a spouse, that if we love someone else, then we're either betraying the one we loved before, or I often hear people say, "I had the best, why would I want anybody else?" And I equate it to almost like having children. You have one child, and just because you have another child doesn't mean that you don't love that child just as much as you love the first child. And as you said, your husbands were completely different. I only have one brother. We're completely different. And my mother, I know for sure, us both the same. So do you feel that way? Do you feel that, for the people that are struggling with that, the guilt of like, I feel like if I move on or if I fall in love with someone else, I'm forgetting the person I have, or I'm betraying the person I have, or I'm never going to find someone as good as that person? Do you feel like that's something that maybe even you struggled with, or do you have any advice for people that do feel that way?
Yes, part of me feels like that is misplaced loyalty. Um, you know, if you had a good marriage the first time, that's more likely to happen, is that loyalty. And Bob was so caring, and he understood only because he was going through it at the same time,
And do you think that helps too? I mean, I think it does. I think it helps, to be with someone that kind of gets it and understands what it feels like, as opposed to someone that may not. And I think if they don't, they sometimes feel like they have to live with a ghost in a sense, like they're trying to compete with this person that they never met and they don't know. Whereas if you do meet someone like you did in a support group who had a similar experience, that they're a little more open to understanding the difficulty of starting a new relationship, or even the benefit of the fact that you both understand that it's still important to remember that first person that you had in your
Yeah,
life.
I was surprised that Bob and I could talk for hours in that support group. And we talked a lot more than I did with Lou. Maybe it was because we had that common problem occurrence together. And we talked till all hours of the night. And probably that it made it easier when we got to the relationship part of it, as we had already talked about so much stuff before that, not knowing that we were going to fall in love and end up living our lives together. So yeah, it's difficult to do. I can imagine somebody who was probably meeting either a divorced person or somebody who had never married before, altogether different circumstances.
Right. And again, like you said before too, I think it's difficult for people that have children too, because they don't know how their children are going to respond to them meeting someone else. And it sounds like your children were pretty good about it.
They really liked Bob, and they used to joke about how handy their father was. He could fix anything. And Bob, the first thing he does is reach for the phone book to call somebody to do it. So they're always making jokes about that sort of thing. But it was lighthearted, and they really admired him.
Yeah. Well, whether you're contemplating a second love or dead set against it, the decision is a personal one. And thank you again, Julia. I so appreciate you talking with me today. You inspire me, and hopefully you've inspired others.
Well, thank you. I hope everybody finds the wonderful piece of love that I found with my second husband.
Yeah. So if you have any questions about second love, feel free to email me at gary@sgrief.com. And if you want to share any of your comments in the comment section of this video, you can do that as well. And as I always say, we're all just walking each other home. So be kind, and I hope you find some comfort on your own personal grief journey. Thank you again, Julia.
You're welcome.
And take
Good
care.
to see you. Yeah.